Sadits. Sorry about the visuals in this one. This build has negative visual clarity. I started Poison Spark for Keepers League and I felt a little too basic for a video on just that. But I am using some interesting tech I wanted to showcase. I will cover the Spark build later, but it's nothing that special. A new feature in the Keepers patch is Bloodline Ascendancies, and one caught my eye early on. The Farrul Bloodline has the node Farrul's Will, which reduces your maximum Spectre count to 1, but gives any Beast Spectres a bunch of buffs. This is clearly a demake of Path of Exile 2's Summon Companion, with some of the details being different. This immediately gave me an idea and a goal. Can I force Spectres and Animate Guardian into a build that has no minion support? Minions are the one archetype I never really played at all, and that's entirely due to the clunkiness of permadeath Spectres and Animate Guardian. Both of these problems have been removed in the past 2 patches. So I'm coming at this as someone with almost no experience dealing with minions. From playing with it on my Spark build, it works quite well. Not perfect, but good enough for most situations. For this tech to work, you need the attributes for the gems, which are 155 int and 98 strength, an open 4-link, and ideally convocation on automate, and a free ascendancy point. As long as you have that, this can fit into any build. So let's start with the Spectres first. The Farrul node gives one of the selected presence buffs and 3 random modifiers. The random modifiers are the same from rare enemies. These are either very useful like haste or discipline auras, or extremely annoying like Molten Gel or Corpse Explosion. As for the buff, I was going to pick Fertile Will at the start for regen and more damage, but after playing for a while it felt like there was a lot more action speed slows than normal, so I switched to Wild Will for the haste and action speed floor. For the actual Spectre, the best beast I found is the Forest Tiger. This comes from a corpse in Ritual. This beast is good because he gives free frenzy charges. There is also a perfect variant that has a free haste aura with it, but that corpse is very expensive. A normal one is just fine for the most part. The biggest downside is that the Tiger has this White Stampede skill that covers half of the screen. It's very good for proccing its frenzy on hit, but very bad for seeing anything. That plus the rare mods getting in the way make screen clarity a real issue. There are other good beast corpses as well. Perfect Guardian Turtle has a Determination aura, and Perfect Primal Thunderbird has a Grace aura. Do know that all of the perfect forms of beast corpses are rather expensive, but it does give more choices. If all else fails, you can always get a Carnage Chieftain from Act 2 for just some charge generation. For Animate Guardian, it's pretty basic. Doppelganger's Guise for the body armor for some regen. Leercast has a helmet for some increased damage aura. Windscreen Boots for an extra curse, and then a Corrupted Curse on hit gloves to proc the extra curse. One thing we do have to worry about is the Guardian's resistances. Animate Guardians only have 30 base all res, so you need to get 45 of it somewhere. This is usually on gear or auras. Minion builds are usually necromancers that get 30 for free, but we don't have that. My solution was to abandon the usual Dying Breath Staff, instead for a rare shield with a bunch of resistances on it. A more min-maxed version would probably want to get the extra resistances on the Corrupted Gloves instead, so that they could use a Kingmaker, but that's a much higher budget than I wanted to spend on this build. Both AG and Spectre are linked with Minion Life and Meat Shield. Convocation on Automation is needed as that's the only source of regen for the Spectre, and it does keep them close. This keeps them alive mostly, but they still do die. But since now they just respawn, it doesn't really matter that much if they die. They only tend to die in intense mapping situations, like a lot of mobs attacking at once. They never die in bosses. I did, however, find a way to accidentally kill your Spectre permanently, and that was from unequipping the item with the Spectre gem and leaving the zone. That's probably something left over whenever Spectres were before. But if you can fit it, you can get all these buffs pretty easily on any build. It does add a lot of screen clutter, but what doesn't anymore? Speaking of screen clutter, Spark. I don't really have much to say here. It's Poison Spark. You cast Spark, it's poisons. It used to be one of the most creative builds a long time ago, but now it feels so basic compared to today's standards. There are some quirks to Spark. Spark needs projectile speed, pierce, and skill duration to scale. We get projectile speed and pierce from the ranger area of the tree, and skill duration from the damage over time nodes. This does mean there's a bit of double dipping in the scaling. Poison is enabled from 4 points into the assassin tree to get infused toxins. Poison chance comes from 2 clusters on the tree, 30 from assassin, and Herald of Agony. There's actually a lot of sources of poison for spells now, so you can mix them around if you want to. One underused part of Assassin, at least I think, is the node Shadowed Blood. This node gives 40% physical recoup, which basically does nothing and is kinda useless, but the more important one is unaffected by damaging ailments. This enables a lot of tech. At the surface level, it makes Poison, Bleed, and Ignite do nothing. But it also enables the Golden Roll gem. Golden Roll lets you reflect poisons back onto you for extra chaos res. While mapping, this is perfectly capped at 100 at almost all times, but for a single target it falls to around 30. Either way, that's very good value on a jewel. Speaking of single target, Spark has really bad single target. Do not get baited by maximum hit DPS, this almost never happens. In most cases you're dealing with only one hit. Spark works in a way that it can hit the same target multiple times after a short travel delay. This only really happens when the enemy is right up against a wall or in a tight hallway. The new Wall of Force skill somewhat helps, but it reaches its bounce limits instantly. Spark's main use is clear, and it clears very well. It's particularly good at breach and the breach hives. Gearing is pretty simple. Leper's Alms is a pretty underrated shield that gives good raw defenses and some poison duration. The tree was printing +1 fractured gem wands, so I just spammed essences on one until I got one with projectile speed and dot multi. One thing to note is that spell damage will not affect poison damage, but elemental damage will, so you want either lightning, chaos, or just generic elemental damage. I got incredibly lucky with this amulet, but it's only comparable damage to a Spark Dragon Fang. The main issue I had with this build was trying to fix mana. I put minus mana cost in every piece of jewelry and it still was not enough. A small amount of mana on kill on the tree fixes it for clear, but I still need a mana flask for single target. Overall, I give this build 7 out of 10. It was a perfectly fine starter. It cleared the Atlas, got all the Watchstones from nothing. Clear was very good, single target was pretty disappointing. I also don't think this is the best form of Spark. Mana Stack and E-Blade Battle Mage versions would probably be a lot better than this. There really isn't a large advantage to going poison, but it works fine. I give Farrul Spectral Tech a 9 out of 10 though. It can fit in almost any int build with not many issues. If you aren't using a 4-link, it's a great way to turn it into a bunch of raw stats for your build, assuming you have an extra ascendancy point. It's also a global source of can't be slowed below base, which is being more and more needed as of late. I do expect it to have more issues at higher level of juicing, but for my uses it's fine. And that's about all for this one. Despite me liking this league way more than the past 2, or 3 actually, I can't think of many new builds. Maybe something will catch my eye. I'm also thinking of committing the cardinal sin of YouTube of uploading different content. I play different games on off-season and I kinda just want to make videos about them.